This novel should be titled Reasons Why Some People Should Not Have Kids. Today, instead of doing an episode of Cook and Book, we are going to do something new called Eat and Read. And the only reason why we're doing this is because obviously I have moved into a new apartment. The entire process of moving was just really tiring. Now I'm way too lazy to even begin to learn how to cook in this new kitchen. I was barely able to cook in the old kitchen of the place I used to live in. So I just wanted to take it easy today and just order takeout instead. I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of May, which was also Asian Readathon, which means I only read Asian books this month, so I thought it would be fitting for me to order Asian food. I know some of you like to eat while watching these videos, so we can still eat together while talking about books. Today I'm eating pad ki mao from my local Thai restaurant, and as always I'll be doing book giveaways. One of them is gonna be one of the books I read this month, which is Craft in the Real World, along with 5 brand new hardcover books because this video is sponsored by Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers discover books that they love. Their team vets hundreds of books each month and gives readers their own choice to choose from a curated selection of new and early release titles. It is risk-free, so you can skip any month, anytime, and you will not be charged. The books that they gave me for the month of June include Instructions for Dancing, a young adult novel about a girl who finds love and renewed purpose on the dance floor after her parents' divorce. Sky Falling, a contemporary novel about a woman who sells her eggs and 12 years later she meets her daughter who shows up on her own doorstep. Half Sick of Shadows, a fantasy book that is an epic feminist retelling of the legend of King Arthur. The Maidens, which is a gripping thriller about murder, myth, and the horror lurking beneath the ivory tower. And Malibu Rising, which is a historical fiction novel that follows a couple of infamous siblings over the course of one life-changing night. The last book would be my personal choice because Taylor Jenkins Reid is also the author of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is not only a previous Book of the Month choice, but it is a really, really good book that I rated 5 stars about 2 years ago. Giveaway details will be in my description below, but if you are interested in getting these books guaranteed, you can sign up for your first box for $9.99 using my code READWITHCINDY. Alright, now let's just eat good Asian food and talk about some of the Asian books that I read recently. The first book that I read this month was Home Fire. The story centers around these British Muslim siblings whose father joined a jihadist group and they have to deal with the police state and Islamophobia. One of the main characters is this girl who has spent most of her life looking after her younger siblings after their mom passed away. Her sister lives in London and her brother is just missing. He went off to follow the legacy of their jihadist father, and by the time she hears about him, she finds out that not only is he basically on the other side of the world, he is also in prison for his very extremist actions. The plot begins when there's this new guy that enters their lives and he falls in love with the sister who's in London, but the trouble about their budding romance is that he's the son of a powerful political figure who happens to be on the opposing side of what the sisters stand for. So it's very much like star-crossed lovers. Both of these families have very different opinions on what family is supposed to be like, and also different opinions on how to show and display Muslim beliefs. So there's a lot of cultural clashes going on. It also raises questions about how we treat terrorists and families, because a lot of times if you have a family member that has a very extreme point of view or an extreme position, you are often just tied to them by association, and how does that affect the dynamic of how other people perceive you today. I think this book just wasn't for me, and I don't know if it was because I wasn't in the right headspace at the moment. I picked up this book when there were a lot of things going on in the world politically, which was very draining for me. So to pick up this book and read for escapism, but not really for escapism, was just something that was very heavy for me to deal with. What was difficult for me was to be attached to any of the characters, because at first I was ready to dive into the story about the girl who's been looking after her siblings and now she wants to move to America to finally pursue her dreams. But then the story splits into different sections and alternates the point of views with the other characters. It was hard for me to get invested in each character properly. So it's definitely one of those books where it's not really focused on character development. It's more so just establishing these characters so that each one of them can represent something for this bigger theme that the author is trying to convey. And the characters characters are more just like props to set up that theme. It didn't really hit me as hard, hence why I gave it 3 stars, but I could definitely see how people might enjoy it if they are specifically interested in these kinds of themes explored. The next book that I read is The Bride Test by Helen Huang. I read The Kiss Quotient for last year's Asian Readathon and I enjoyed it. This is another romance book that also follows an autistic character. This time it follows an autistic Vietnamese man who has always struggled with processing his emotions. He doesn't do it the same way as other people do, but because of that, he thinks that he has no emotions. And so he's really internalized that, and that has caused him to avoid any relationship. But his mom, as many Asian moms are, is like, nah, I'm not gonna accept that. So the main girl of this book is a mixed race girl who has been living in Vietnam. She works as a toilet cleaner at this fancy hotel, and that's how she meets the mom of the main guy. And the mom really likes her because she's been trying to find like the perfect woman that would be a good match for her son. When she meets the daughter, who's like literally scrubbing the toilets, she's like, this is perfect because this bitch is humble. She has green eyes, so that means she's not like other Vietnamese girls. So she gives the main girl an opportunity to come to America and meet her potential husband. And if she is able to seduce the guy and get him to marry her, then she can basically chill in America with this green card and have a better life there. So the main girl says yes. The mom brings her to America. She makes her move in to the same apartment that the guy is in, and he doesn't know about it till literally the day of when she comes in. So this book really tries to make you suspend your disbelief, but I feel like that's very common for these kinds of romance books. I definitely didn't like this book as much as I did with The Kiss Quotient. I just didn't feel like the characters had any chemistry with each other or any genuine connection. Like, they do fall for each other, but I don't understand why beyond just physical attraction. So I don't have any reason to believe that they would be a good match for each other. Another problem I saw was that both of them were very passive with moving the plot forward. Like, the only reason why the plot moved forward in the first place was because of every other side character that would force them to be in certain situations. The whole setup of the mom literally flying in some stranger from Vietnam to set her up with this guy was already a lot, but even when they have miscommunication issues and the inevitable third act conflict that happens later, the only way those issues get resolved is when the side characters step in and try to solve it for them. Like, the main guy has this brother, and he always steps in and just spells out everything for them and tells the main guy what he needs to do or why the main girl acted the way that she did. He was basically like their relationship counselor. First of all, the brother is the MVP. He's doing way too much work for a side character, so he needs to get a raise. But second of all, I feel like if you're reading a romance story and the only way that the romance happens is not from the lead characters, but from all the other side characters pushing them forward, it kind of just lacks any agency from the couple in the first place. And when it comes to solving their relationship issues or their miscommunication issues, I feel like it's important for the characters in that relationship to have an active role in that. Otherwise, it's like, how the hell are you two gonna survive if you need to have side characters spell everything out for you? I kept on thinking, why do you even like each other? You don't even understand one another. You're definitely physically attracted to each other. I can see that. Literally, the moment the main guy meets the main girl, he's just gawking at her, and we're reading it from his perspective, and he describes her as having a porn star body, which is like obviously a super romantic thing to describe the love of your life. It's totally not weird to have your mom set up a mail order bride for you and then describe her as having a porn star body. There's no weird implications of that at all. Sometimes things happen in this book that I just didn't get. The main girl was sent over there to essentially seduce him, right? So that he would want to marry her. She is more of like a pure girl because she doesn't have bad intentions, but you could argue that maybe from a third party observer, it kind of seems like she's just in it for the green card. And at some point in the story, she gets really weepy because she gets afraid that the main guy is not gonna like her anymore once he finds out that she lied to him about being an accountant. And I'm like, girl, I'm pretty sure that won't be a deal breaker. I'm pretty sure you have other things to worry about that might threaten the truth of the relationship. Also, the main guy's brother, I like him and I'm looking forward to reading more about him in the third book when it's his turn to be the main character. But there's this part where after the main guy and the main girl have sex, it's amazing, of course, because this is a romance book. But it doesn't go so well afterward because instead of finishing her off, he just gets up from the bed and takes a shower instead because he just misses like social cues. And she gets really upset because she just feels like she was used while he's just taking a shower and he's thinking, oh, I gotta be clean and ready for her. So she gets upset and he doesn't understand why because, again, he just doesn't process emotions the same way as other people do. So he literally shows up to his brother's doorstep to ask him for advice on why she left crying after they had sex, which again is a very weird situation. But I'm glad that they're close enough as brothers that you can literally show up to your brother's doorstep and ask him for sex advice. Good for them. But the weird part about it is that the brother was giving him advice and then he hands him a bunch of books. One of the books is called Sex for Dummies. Honestly, if you have a book that's literally titled Sex for Dummies, I don't even know what advice to give you at this point. It was just weirdo behavior from everyone. It was hard to take any of the story seriously, which I guess is okay because you don't need to take every story seriously. But I feel like there could have been a lot of potential for the story to go deeper because there's this whole ordeal about being an immigrant from a country like Vietnam and having to start your life all over in America. And we get to see bits and pieces of that, but so much of it gets sugar-coated. The process was just so oversimplified and easy. It was kind of like romanticized in a way where it was like, oh, finally, this is the American dream that she's always wanted, and now this American dream is coming true. But in reality, it's not like that at all. The process is very, very difficult. You deal with so many misconceptions of your character, and I would imagine the loneliness of having to start your life all over in a new country. And we didn't really get to see much of that explored. We could have gone a lot deeper with how this book portrays the immigrant experience and how the American dream is just this illusion that people make up. And how do we come to terms with that and grapple with that as Asians who are just trying to make it in America? But we didn't get any of that. Instead, we get a book that's literally titled Sex for Dummies. After that, I read Everything I Never Told You, which is a literary novel about a Chinese American family who's living in a small town in Ohio, and it takes place in the 1970s, which means that we get a fun little throwback to racism back then. That's always fun. The dad is Chinese, the mom is white, all their kids are biracial. Their favorite child is their daughter that they project all of their unfulfilled dreams onto, and the story begins when her body is found in a lake. This isn't a thriller. You're not trying to figure out all the wild stuff that happened that led to her body being in the lake. This is more of like a slow-paced family portrait. You are seeing how each family member, the mom, the dad, the overlooked siblings, are dealing with this tragedy. As you read more about the characters, you learn about the dynamics between the parents and the children. The interesting thing about the parents, and also the most annoying thing about the parents, is that the Asian dad wants to be white so bad, and the white mom wants to be different so bad. And you can see how that plays out with how the two even got together as a couple in the first place. And then you see how that creates friction between them later on. The dad was definitely my least favorite character of the book. I understand his role from a literary perspective, but God, he was so annoying and kind of sleazy. So you find out in chapter 2 that the way that he met his wife in the first place is actually when he was a teaching assistant and she was one of the students. That's how they got together, which was kind of weird. But then even from chapter 1, when you follow them in present day, he's now a professor, and there is this new student in his class. Basically, something's happened between them, which doesn't surprise me at all because clearly he has a pattern with this shit. And the story tries to show why he's doing all this sketchy shit, because he wants so badly to be white. So when he met his future wife, who is a white girl who shows interest in him, that's really amazing because now he finally has that white validation that he has always wanted. And on one hand, I know he's dealing with all that internalized racism with wanting to assimilate and all that kind of bullshit. But on the other hand, this guy is sketchy as hell. We all deal with racism. I'm not gonna sleep with a student because of that. This ain't My Dark Vanessa, bitch. Get your hands away from all these young girls. You're too old for this shit. The mom of this book is the reason why I would not recommend this book to anybody who is a full-time mom, because she hates that shit a lot. That is her whole ordeal throughout the book. She wanted to be a doctor, but she had to give up her dreams for that when she had that little gross relationship with the dad, and she ended up pregnant, so she had to take care of the kids instead of going to medical school. Her entire character arc is basically telling you that motherhood is terrible and will destroy all of your dreams. She literally has a cookbook that her mom had that she noticed had tear stains. So she'll flip through the cookbook pages and think about all of the dreams that her mother gave up just to have her, and then she thinks about all the dreams she gave up, and then she adds onto the tears that the book seems to accumulate, which is a very not so subtle metaphor. Don't you see how this tear-stained cookbook is symbolism for the banality of motherhood and how it gets in the way of your girl boss dreams? It's really deep if you think about it. So the annoying thing about the parents is that obviously they have all these unresolved internal issues and they project that onto their kids so much. This novel should be titled Reasons Why Some People Should Not Have Kids. The mom pressures the daughter to excel at school and become a doctor because that's who she never got to be. The dad is always trying to get her to make new friends and giving her gifts and saying things like, oh, you should have this gift because everyone likes these. Oh, you should go to this event because you'll make new friends from here. And it's like, bitch, we get it. You have internalized racism and you want to be accepted by white people. Please, just get therapy. So I rated this book 3 stars, which is a shame because I really like the author's other book, Little Fires Everywhere, but this book didn't hit me as much. And I think the main reason why is because the messaging is very in your face. I don't mind that the characters are annoying because you don't need to like a character to enjoy a book, but the messaging is so on the nose. The characters' inner conflicts are so obvious and blatantly spelled out to the point where it almost feels like an exaggeration. Like the whole thing about the mom looking at the cookbook that has tear stains on the pages, even the dad who wants so badly to be assimilated becomes a professor that teaches American history, because of course he fucking would. What I liked about Little Fires Everywhere is that it felt a lot more nuanced and that there was more room for interpretation rather than trying to hammer down the message. I just felt like she was doing too much. And then the last book that I read for this month is Craft in the Real World. This is a nonfiction book that challenges you to rethink the way that you read or write or interpret fiction writing. So much of the structure with the way that writing workshops are fall prey to biases that people have when they critique other people's writing. The book also emphasizes how we have cultural biases when we interpret work, which is really interesting because it would explain how the current writing workshop system doesn't really serve to support marginalized writers who might have different cultural writing styles that aren't seen as the norm or the standard. Because a lot of times, like especially in the US, we have Western expectations for what a good story should be and what the structure of a good story should be. And I really like that this book challenges that. There's a part where the author talks about the way that we write characters and how when we prescribe an identity to the character, whether that's sexuality or race, a lot of times readers will project their assumptions about how that character should act. And it reminded me a lot of discourse on book Twitter, because so much discourse that happens in the book community is about whether representation was accurate or not, based on whether it matches their own experience or what they expect the experience should be like. Another thing that he said about characters is that a lot of times writers and readers view characters as an autonomous being with their own personality outside of the pages, when there is another way to look at these characters, which is really, instead of like their own people, these characters are just something that was created by the circumstances of the story. It's kind of like more nurture instead of nature. And that part really stood out to me because that's actually how I view my characters when I write. When I see questionnaires to build your character or introduce your characters to other people, and they ask questions like, what would your character's superpower be? Or what would the music on your character's playlist be? I don't know the answers to that, and I'm not interested in thinking of an answer for that because I don't view my characters as like just any person that you can drop off anywhere. There are specific people that were designed for the circumstances of the story that I've set up, and I always wondered if that was a very narrow-minded way of perceiving those characters. It kind of validates me to read this book and have this perspective be brought to light. Characters don't have to be autonomous people. They can just be things that are created by the specific situations and world that is within this book. Like, my characters don't have a favorite genre of music. Those bitches are too busy trying to survive. The second half of the book also has a bunch of workshop exercises that I think would be really useful to writers, because the questions are all very thought-provoking. They force writers to challenge themselves with the way that they think about their story. There's this one section that asks you to create a list of decisions that your major characters make. And it says to ask yourself, who makes the most decisions in the story, implicitly or explicitly? Whose decisions have the most impact on the world? Do you want the protagonist to make more decisions? Try to identify how each character's decisions impact the other characters. What cultural influences inform the character's decisions? There's a lot of exercises that make you think about the audience of your book too, because one of the downsides of like a workshop is that when you're getting all this feedback from your classmates, they might not necessarily be the audience that you're writing for. And he mentions a really good point that your writing for this specific audience is going to be very different from your writing to the outside audience. I gave this 4 stars because even though I'm not the specific audience that the book is going for, I still think it has a lot of merit. I would say the audience for this is more geared specifically towards people who are in writing workshops rather than just writers in general, who are more interested in writing literary novels rather than genre novels. Because a lot of times literary fiction writers are more focused on constructing themes over plot and action, and a lot of this book is more focused on the themes and messaging. The one conclusion I have decided from this book is that I will definitely not be attending workshops, because that shit is way too much work. Way too much thinking is required. I don't want to be like that. I just want to write my book, be done with it, and go. Just like Sarah J Maas with her crap. Like, all these exercises are aiming to make you think very deeply about your story. But after going through the 800 pages that was A Court of Silver Flames, I now know that it does not have to be that deep at all. But hey, if you want to make sure your writing is deep and very carefully, thoughtfully put together, then you should go ahead and read this book. That concludes my video. Go ahead and unsubscribe from my channel, and goodbye.
You are not an image or a product or commodity. You are worth more because you like to eat broccoli. You're made up of your thoughts, habits, hopes, fears,